Welcome to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. I'm Dan Rowe, and I've masterminded the ascent of local favorites to global dominators. This isn't your usual get-to-know-you chat. We're diving deep. We're revealing the raw truths about franchise wealth building. With over 30 years in the trenches, I'm spilling it all. If you have an appetite for unfiltered tales and the hidden blueprints of franchise prosperity, buckle up. We're diving in. All right, welcome to Smart Franchising with FranSmart, and today we're going to be talking to a self-made, multi-unit, multi-brand, multi-state franchisee who started with nothing and now has 125 plus locations of Little Caesars, Wingstop, Whataburger, and heading to 200 locations and who knows what else. And for everything that you hear about the restaurant industry being tough right now, you're going to hear from someone who thinks that now's as good a time as any. So with that, let's get going with Irfaan Lalani from Vibe Restaurants. Now, look, it's okay to talk about wealth that can be created in this industry. That's why we're here. And I want people who are listening to do it for themselves. So with that, Irfaan, please tell us your story. Let's get going.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Happy to be here. Thanks for giving me the time, everybody. So as Dan said, my name is Irfaan Lalani. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Vibe Restaurants. I've had the pleasure of working with my two founders, my brother Faisal and my other brother Shalin, to really build what we believe to be one of the premier restaurant franchise groups in the world. And really happy to share my story as we go through this podcast. But today, happy to say we are the third largest Little Caesars franchisee. We are rocking and rolling with Wingstop with over 50 units opened in a very short time frame of 2.5 years, and are super excited to be part of a really small group, a family of Whataburger franchisees. And excited to tell you guys a little bit about my secret sauce and what got us here.
Good. So how did it all start? Like, take us back to the very beginning.
Yeah, for sure. It's always fun for me to tell this story. I'll give credit where credit's due. In Shalin was really the pioneer in our group. After graduating from UT, he went on and opened the first Little Caesars in Nacogdoches, Texas, back in 2005. Fast forward, opened a couple locations and had teamed up with my brother who had gone to UT as well. And they got to know each other very well during that time. It was that time when an opportunity came up in Corsicana, Texas, an opportunity Faisal couldn't resist. And so that's when that officially started. They started working together. At the time, I was working in the Middle East. After graduating from Cornell, I had moved to Dubai to work for JLL. I was in their hotels team doing mostly development work and really had no plans of moving back home or for anything getting back in the restaurant business, to say the least. Long story short, they both had visited me and had said, hey, this Little Caesars thing is a real opportunity. You should really think about coming back home and we can do something together. You know, we all knew kind of early on that we had different skill sets. And so, they left that upon me. And it really took a year, I would say, for me to really come to terms with, hey, is this the opportunity that I want to take? For me, I went to an Ivy League school. I was working my dream job. I loved being in Dubai. It was a very happening and still is a very happening place. And, I didn't really want to leave. But at the end of the day, financial freedom, financial independence is what I sought as an entrepreneur. And, how I got there, to me, I started being a little more open to, hey, maybe it's not just the hotel development path. Maybe there's other things out there. So long story short, we moved sight unseen to Washington, D.C. in 2010 to open up our first Little Caesars. We had negotiated the rights to develop the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. And really, that was the start of it. The three owners really kind of segregated the areas we were in by geography. I was developing the Northeast. Faisal was focusing on Oklahoma. And Shalin had his foothold in East and West Texas already. And that's really kind of how it started. We all just really worked really hard in the stores. It was, everything as you can imagine, from site selection to hiring to monitoring the GCs to running the restaurants eventually. And that was actually the hardest part. The building part was fairly easy. And as I reflect, it was just the managing people and how do you create training programs and incentives that are so different than what I've been accustomed to in my professional career. So definitely a big learning curve, but because this is a podcast and we'll keep it abbreviated, really just hustle. We were very involved at every store opening. We worked in our stores, and I would say, as I look back, a very instrumental part of where we are today, because we've never forgotten that the magic happens in the four walls. So even though we hire great people in our support staff, we've got this great executive team. At the end of the day, the magic happens in the four walls.
Yeah, I feel bad for anyone who thinks owning a franchise is an ATM machine, because they don't work like that. Like, you have to, no matter what it is, and no matter, like, I mean, I started off washing dishes and cooking. It's like, it's all about operations. You still got to operate. But
Exactly. I
yeah,
tell people brutally honest nowadays, if you call me for advice and you're looking for a career change or making an investment, I'm usually going to tell you no, because unless you have your eyes set on really taking it and scaling it, and it's a great business, but you have to be ready to be 100% in. It's not a desk job. So.
yeah. Well, and now 125 units later, so let's go through each brand. What is good about being a franchisee for Little Caesars? And by the way, you guys are in small markets, right? Like, talk about the opportunities in small markets versus big markets.
For sure. And yeah, so I would say our thesis, our theory at Vibe from a very early stage, if you look at our first 50 restaurants, the majority of them are in smaller populations. And we really saw early on, the opportunity for us was to be the big fish in the small pond. And it was a risk, but it's a risk that's worked out for us. And it comes with its own set of challenges, but with that, it's its own set of opportunities as well. And so it's really that playbook that we went to Wingstop with to say, hey, this works for us. These are markets that probably are not on your radar, but we know we can make a go of it. And it's really opened their eyes, and we've been able to replicate that playbook there. And Whataburger has known this all along because they dominate in all these markets. So it was a perfect pairing for us when we got that opportunity with them as well.
So out of all your restaurants, what percentage would you think are in small markets?
I mean, if you define small as 20,000 or less in population, I mean, without busting out the store list, I would say 80% at least. I mean, we're
Small
blessed
markets.
not to be in larger markets now. And those are great opportunities as well. But I would say, yeah, a majority of the portfolio, I would go to say, is a
Wow.
smaller.
What are some of the challenges and the opportunities in the small markets? I mean, you got a smaller market means smaller people are there, but then, like, you're finding there's probably relatively fewer people competing with you. But what's the good and the bad and the ugly of small markets?
For sure. And it differs, I would say, different things for different brands, but generally speaking, across our portfolio, I would say, the biggest ones that come to mind are, just the number of stomachs. There's only so many people you're feeding. And so we'll see, huge store openings in some of these markets because everyone is excited because there's nothing else really going on. And then that honeymoon goes away pretty quickly, and you're faced with the reality that, hey, you fed everybody for the last 30 days. They need a little break. Granted, we try to go in places where there's a bigger draw from other areas. Labor, is challenging everywhere. So just exponentially in a smaller market with just less people that are eligible in the workforce. And then I would say at the Vibe corporate level, something that people don't often recognize is with smaller markets, that means there's a lot of drive time. Your teams are in the car a lot. There's a lot of distance between your locations. And so at a portfolio level, that really shows itself in your G&A number. We purposely have a higher G&A because of this strategy, because you just have more windshield time. And so your span of control tends to be smaller.
Got it. Talk about each of the brands. How about Little Caesars? What's good from a franchisee's perspective? What's good about that brand? I mean, they just seem to be on fire.
Yeah, we're blessed. I mean, if I look back and look at the portfolios at our portfolio and the brands we've chosen to grow with, and there's been others that we haven't chosen to grow with, that just weren't aligned with what we were trying to do. But if you look at the three of them, they're all three iconic brands. They're founder led. They're founded by a person who was very aligned with who we are as founders. Even the companies today, and I'll share more when we go through each of the brands, are very aligned with Vibes culture and what we're about at Vibe Restaurants. So it makes it, Granted, we have to be great operators and we have to be aligned, but this alignment at a cultural level, I've really seen it be part of our success. And so, yeah, if you want to go brand by brand, happy to.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the first time I ever went to Little Caesars was in San Antonio. I lived there briefly. And it was a little carry. I remember their niche was it was carry out only. It was good, cheap pizza, but you had to come get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so with Little Caesars, what's amazing about the brand from my perspective as a franchisee, we're the third largest franchisee in the Little Caesars system. I really tell people that's kind of where we cut our teeth. Those are the stores that we spent the most time in, and so obviously have a very strong connection to the brand and the product and everything they're about. But they own the value segment for pizza. And to own a category is a very powerful thing. And they've done a really good job staying focused, not getting outside of their lane when other brands that we all know, tend to get out of their lane and lose focus and then can't honestly say they own a category. So that's been really cool to see them evolve with the age of digital and see them roll out the pizza portal with the whole, with their digital rollout and the whole, timing that couldn't have timed it better right before COVID. Their true touchless pickup through the hot pizza portal in the lobbies. So really seeing how they've evolved and how now their customer base is growing, and they're never, I would say they're not staying stagnant. They're always trying to make sure they're staying relevant and very family oriented at the franchisor level. So
Hmm.
that definitely resonates.
Yeah. And how many of those have you built versus bought?
Yeah, great question. I joke, I say we did it the hard way with Little Caesars. We didn't really start acquiring, till probably after our 50th location, let's call it. And so we really, you know, we did it the hard way. We site selected, we lease negotiated, and for those who are in the business, to get 50 open, you're doing 100 to 150 deals to get that many to the
Yeah.
finish line. So, and then yeah, we learned about acquisitions, and obviously it's a faster way to grow, but comes with its own set of challenges. But fast forward today, we've really built the platform to be able to do both very well. And so we're big new store builders, new opportunity, organic growth, and acquirers as well.
Yeah. Now, how about Wingstop? I know a bunch of Wingstop franchisees. Everybody loves that brand. What's so good about Wingstop?
Yeah. Also, they're a great brand. We're very proud to be in that system as well. Their focus on operations, I would say, from a franchisee's perspective, is really what sets them apart. And they mean what they say and they do what they say. And they have very bright people working there. They've really leaned in technology and really understand the customer of today and how to speak to them and how to use the data that comes from these transactions to really move the needle in very material ways. So it's interesting. They're the only three of our brands that's publicly traded, and so we see the benefit of that. Capital is not a constraint, and they're able to be long term thinkers. And at the end of the day, we're very aligned. Same store sales growth, and smart growth is what they're looking for, and those are exactly the same things that we want. And so they're definitely aligned with us.
Yeah, and it's hard to get a franchise. It's hard to actually get a franchise of Wingstop.
Right, and I joke with them that that's the best sign that you're doing a good job is when you don't have to go outside, when all your opportunities can be filled from people within the brand.
Yeah, a franchisor's key to wealth is multi-unit franchisees. There's no money in single unit franchisees. So you want big multi-unit. If you could have 50 units or 250 units, it's the same phone call to you, but it's 250 royalties. And I don't
Yeah,
know why more franchisors don't prioritize that.
right, right. Yeah, and lastly, I'll say with Wingstop before we jump into Whataburger, the flavor profile of their product is just amazing. It's so bold and so unforgettable that it's one of those things when I talk about Wingstop in a meeting, I generally want to have Wingstop after that meeting. And I know everybody feels that way about the product. So it's a great combination of a great product, great leadership, great marketing, great segment. There's just so many stars that have aligned, and To be honest, if people don't tell you luck is part of their journey on this podcast, then they just maybe forgot to mention it, because for me, it's a huge part of how we got here. And we just got lucky. We got into Little Caesars at the right time. We got into Wingstop at the right time, and we got into Whataburger at the right time. And all those stars don't align just because.
But is that luck exclusive to you, or do you think it's out there for anyone looking? I feel like people
I
make
think it's
their own
out
luck.
there. I think it's out there for anybody who's looking. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I
I,
think
I I feel
everybody's
like
got to take the
people
first
make
step,
their own luck by
for sure.
hustling.
You got to, and the part that I see people get tripped up on is that first step, that first whatever thing they're going to do. They get so stuck on, is it going to work? Am I going to scale it? I'm like, okay, well, you're never going to know unless you do that first one. So,
Hmm.
and momentum's everything. You got a dud. I guarantee you, if the first Little Caesars we opened was a dud, we probably wouldn't be here today.
True, true.
We've had
Which is why it's important for
many
franchisors. If you sell a franchise, make sure your franchisee's first store is not a dud. It's got to be strong so that they want to keep going. And so we're saving the best for last is Whataburger. From my time in San Antonio, I can't tell you how many times after the clubs we went to Whataburger. Delicious burger, but and that now Whataburger seems like it's going crazy. But tell me what you like about Whataburger.
Yeah, so Whataburger is one of those. It's kind of the Hail Mary for us in a way, in the sense that from a business, if they ever do a Harvard case study on Vibe restaurants, they're going to be like, I don't know what they were thinking with this Whataburger, because up until then they had a very clear strategy: simple, inline, replicable, low labor, low footprint, simple menu. And so you take everything that's the opposite of what I just said, and that's Whataburger. It's huge building, a lot of employees, awesome menu, but a lot of SKUs. And really, Whataburger was one of those things where it was obviously luck that we are in this business when they got acquired by BDT, when they were looking for franchisees, because historically, Whataburger is a system with not many franchisees. They have 10 or so legacy franchisees, and it's 90% corporately developed. And so then again, we just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and happened to have a big portfolio of restaurants in Oklahoma. We happened to know somebody at Whataburger at the time who was in the franchising efforts. And really, it was that, I would say, out of all of them, it was that cultural alignment we saw with Whataburger. Like that, the family values that they live at Whataburger are so in line with what we do at Vibe. It's insane. And so that was kind of an immediate off the top. Okay, hey, these are good people working with other good people. So whatever it is that we're selling, that's cool. We're going to figure that out. But at the end of the day, you're good people. We're good people. We know these markets. And obviously there was many steps. I joke now that that was probably the most thoroughest vetting process we've ever gone through with any brand. And at that point, if I look back, we were 100+ restaurants already, so it wasn't like we were just figuring it out. But they wanted to make sure these were the right people to represent us in these
Yeah.
markets.
Yeah, that's
Kudos to them for
yeah,
being.
no, that's an argument for franchisors should say no more often, right? You get a couple bad franchisees in a bunch, it ruins everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're one of maybe 10 groups that got allocated areas, if I'm not mistaken. So we don't take that lightly. We're very proud that we can say we are Whataburger franchisees.
Good.
And
Hey, so let's talk about Vibe now, because this is probably the big thing, right? Because Little Caesars, Wingstop, Whataburger, they have their own culture, their own training, their own systems, but you guys have Vibe. So Vibe is like another layer, a bigger layer of whatever you want to call it. But I mean, you guys are rooted. Part of what's made you guys successful is how you guys treat your employees. And it's funny because a lot of times a brand in talking about their culture will talk about their own history and stuff like that, not necessarily how you build your team. So talk about Vibe. Let's dive in, because I think that's where a lot of the secrets to why you're so successful is in what you guys are doing at Vibe.
yeah, perfect. And this is something that I love to talk about. because for me, this is where it all happens. The special sauce, like I said, is in the restaurants, but there's also something that we've done almost by accident in some ways, but it's really authentic to who we are. And it's what Vibe stands for. We'll just start there. Our logo. I know it's kind of maybe could be backwards in the video, but really, Vibe Restaurants was founded by three guys, three brothers, essentially, who love to experience life. And so when we've gone through branding, when we've thought about, hey, what does that look like? Our great friends and branding agency help us come up with our logo that you see today. And for those of you who never noticed or knew, this top of it, of this V, is actually a plane. And that plane represents experiences. And really, that's so near and dear to us because early on, we realized, as we're trying to grow our teams and keep people motivated, that, yeah, money was there. You got to pay, you got to be competitive, market wage, all those good things. You got to dangle the right financial carrot. Agreed. But there was more. We were starting to recognize that, hey, when I took people to Las Vegas for a brand convention and it was their first time on a plane, or it was the first time they went in a limousine, or it was the first time they went to a fancy restaurant. Those were the things that got them lit up and that made them lifers with us. And so early on, we recognize that, hey, there's a real opportunity to be authentic to this idea of experiences. And so, in many different ways, we've kind of capitalized on that within our organization as part of Vibe Restaurants. We have something called vibification, which I'll get into in a minute. But this whole idea of, hey, we want you to live your life as a manager, as a coach. We understand. We're authentic in the sense that, hey, we understand you want to spend time with your family, you want to have fun. And as long as you run a good restaurant and you're in line with your budget and you run a scorecard and all the metrics we need, we have great incentives like unlimited PTO and, different types of things like that to say, hey, we really put our money where our mouth is. And we can't say we want you to experience life when you have no time to experience life, And so a lot of the rewards that we do within our organization are experience based. So, for example, this year, if you hit like a bonus, if you hit a goal, like a stretch goal at a brand level, there's a big cruise that's being organized where the owners are going to be there, the founders, our executive team, and whoever qualifies. And this is something that people will never forget. And those are the types of things that we really start to lean in on more and more. So at the end of the day, to answer your question, if I were to summarize it without getting into all the tactics, happy to talk through any of those too. But really, it's just, we have a very people-centric mindset. We're blessed to have executives on our team that have, and I'm surprised I'm this many minutes in without recognizing the fact that, hey, we made a very conscious decision 7-8 years ago to bring on as chief operating officer, and we're blessed to have Michael Trafari, and we brought on a very seasoned CFO and Jeremy, and they have a playbook of how this happens in other much larger organizations. And so it gives us the luxury of saying, hey, we're not worried that, the lights are turning on and off at these restaurants every day. And so, caveat, none of this stuff happens, this kind of warm, fuzzy stuff, unless those basics are happening. So because we have that taken care of and we excel in that, we're able to now say, hey, what are these other things that have a longer term impact? And so it's very, very eye-opening to me, this idea of vibification. We use words like that in our organization. Are we vibing? Have we vibified yet? Have we vibified the restaurants? And we're acquirers of restaurants, so it's so eye-opening to me that that we can go into restaurants and sell the same product. Granted, we sell it, it's hotter, fresher, better, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's the same. But we vibify the restaurants and from a cultural perspective and how we see results that are mind-boggling, 60, 70, 80, 100% sales growth because of these cultural impact we have and how we make people feel really important. And I lean into that now. Now I'm seeing how impactful, even though I've been removed from the day-to-day front lines, my presence at certain things is becoming more impactful to our employees, and I'm seeing it. And so I'm leaning in to say, hey, when we do that recognition for that 5-star QSC that happened 5 times in a row, I want to go to that. I want to be there for that. And I'm roping in people from leadership, from the brands.
Yeah.
So, Marisa at Wingstop was excited to join me in Abilene a couple months ago to recognize two of our top performers there. And I had an RVP, or I had somebody, I don't know what their title is, probably going to be mad. I had a VP of Wingstop with me recently in Greenville as part of a celebration. And having them really see what it means and what Vibe is all about and the vibification process. These are stores that 18 months ago, a year ago, were not doing so well, or maybe we're definitely not running at the level they are today. And it's just been really, really rewarding to see, how much impact we're able to make and the impact we're making in people's lives. And because we care and because we're authentic about that through the Vibe Foundation and a lot of different things that we do to really make sure we're authentically doing what our values say we are.
How do you, so I tell people all the time, invest in the company you're trying to build, invest in the sales you want. Like you have to invest. How do you give advice to someone? Because you had also mentioned not only all these things that you do, but you mentioned you probably went deep on a COO, probably went deep on a CFO. How do you explain to people how important that is if you want to build a big company that essentially runs itself, which is kind of the key to being an owner, is that you're not the one that has to spin all the plates. But if you're trying to do that, how do you convince someone to invest and to spend the money and that it's going to come back in spades?
Yeah, great question. And something that I'm also very vocal about nowadays is if you ask me for advice, this is generally a part of, you're going to get this somewhere in there. As I look back and I look back at our trajectory and the work and just where we were at different places in our journey, for me, fundamentally, that first step of being in our restaurants and working them and understanding, hey, how does the pizza get made in that case, was very critical. So I would never have wanted to give that step up. Okay, but there was probably a point, earlier on, because we went into the business knowing we wanted to scale. There was never going to be a slow moment for us. We knew it going in, and we were set up for that. We were young, we were hungry. But advice I give people now that, hey, if you know you're going to scale, get the person that has the playbook. Get the person that's going to help get you there faster, more efficiently. And even though it's going to cost you some money, don't look at it as an expense. It's not an electricity bill. It's not a bill. It's not an expense. It's an investment. And that person, granted, they're going to cost an arm and a leg and they're going to want a piece of the pie and you should give it to them. They if it's the right person, and you have to have the right metrics and the ability to change that if it's not the case, will reap you, I can't give a number, but many, 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 many times more than that investment that you made. And so mathematically, it makes sense. Psychologically, if you think about it, for me, I realized there's a lot of ego in entrepreneurs and in operators that, hey, I can do this and I can do this better and whatever. For me, this is my own story. Well, I was blessed that I knew I wasn't an operator early on. And so I was eager to find a great operator because I knew that was not my God-given skill set. And my skill set was still yet to be found at that point, but I'm very clear about what it is now. And, we had many leaders before Michael, our COO. And, my only advice now, or my only, not regret, but if I were to do it again, I would have bought Michael in from store 5, 10. Like it would be a very different thing today. But you got to make the mistakes along the way. So who knows? Every
Yeah.
mistake is a learning opportunity. But to answer your question, yeah, get higher for where you're going, not for where you are today, would be my little soundbite. That it's an investment, not a cost. And if you're serious about it, then get out of the way and get the people around you who can make it happen. But figure out what value you add too, in that whole equation.
Yeah. Hey, without naming names, what are three things that you think that you do or that your end of the spectrum of good operators do that the other ones don't do? Like, why are some, you had mentioned earlier, like a struggling restaurant, a restaurant that struggles and then it turned around and it kind of started hitting its numbers. Every single system, has the best franchisee and the worst franchisee. And so what do you think it is that you do different, or that the best ones do different, that the ones that struggle just never seem to get right?
Yeah, so great question. I got to think about that one for a second. I would say the first one that comes to mind is if I look at the vibification part, it's the number one piece is the people piece. For us, we're super dialed in that we are in the people business. It doesn't matter if we're selling pizza, wings, or burgers. At the end of the day, the people make it happen. So we go in there with the very people first mentality. So we cannot, we've seen it. We keep the same exact team, manager, and everything. And by empowering the manager to make decisions, de-authorizing the way decision making gets made, you'd be surprised the power some owners yield over their restaurants in terms of how much they can order, their food, labor, all the different things. They are very in control of that, and so by empowering the team, we see results right away. I would say the other piece that differentiates us is really the people piece in terms of the growth in our people and the opportunities that we provide. We know that at the end of the day, to open, give you guys some perspective who are listening, it's not unheard of for us to grow our Wingstop portfolio from a restaurant or EBITDA or revenue, whatever perspective, 50% plus year over year for 3 or 4 years. We've been doing that for years on years on years, and that's not slowing down on a bigger base. And the only way that happens is because we know we have to continually cultivate and lead the future leaders. And so we have on deck programs, we have a lot of systems in place to make sure my COO knows, and Michael is going to hear this, never say no to me when it comes to a new opportunity, when there's an acquisition, when there's something that is very amazing for us as a company. He doesn't want to be the one to say, hey, sorry, Irfaan, I can't operate it. He knows that's not a good conversation. And so thankfully, he has been very ahead of it and is always hiring for where we need to be. And, makes it look easy, but it's not. He's got a great team. We've got a full-time recruiter whose full-time job is to make sure we're able to bring in and recruit people we need that we're not able to fill internally.
Yeah. And you said that in hindsight, you would have hired a guy like that after 5 stores, right? Like how much easier would your life have been if you
Yeah, I
hired
don't know what the
someone like,
exact number would be, but it would be a hell of a lot earlier than it was today.
yeah. What can you go back to you talked about all of your brands are having increases. So it's 2024, all the headlines are how tough the industry is. How is it you guys are having double digit increases? I mean, and having the results that you guys are having.
Yeah. I would say, a lot of it is obviously we're in great brands. Strategically, we're in brands that we believe are recession proof. COVID proof is a word now. We fared through that fairly very well. And so I think it goes without saying, we're just strategically, because of the brands we're in, we're positioned for kind of whatever you throw at us, recession, pandemic, whatever, we seem to be able to handle it. But I would say aside from that, it's really our focus on operations. Like we never take our eye off the operating magic in our business. And from a metrics perspective, from a personnel perspective, a lion's share of our G&A is in the field, and that's where it should be. And so I would just say, we're very big on achieving results the right way through scorecards and not just saying, we've learned the hard way that, hey, results can be driven by many different levers. And if you say, hey, all I care about is food, paper, labor, you're going to get food, paper, labor, but that might come at the cost of long-term sales growth.
Yeah.
And so we're very dialed in through Michael and Jeremy's leadership on, hey, this is a scorecard that really makes sure you're getting those results in a good way. And we were very aligned on that. Certain brands like Wingstop, actually at a corporate level, at a franchisor level, have a scorecard that they use for every franchisee. And they publish that quarterly, and they've seen tremendous improvement in their system because of that transparency of, hey, these are the levers that make an impact. And they, like us, understand that, hey, these scorecards, if you're operating in a top echelon, that results in more EBITDA at the end of the day, more sales, more flow through. And so it all works. I would say the last thing I would say is one of the values of Vibe is act like an owner. That's one of the pillars that we're built on. And like I said early on in the podcast, we're very authentic to that, and we really empower everybody in our organization to make decisions as if they're the owner. We're very transparent. Their bonus is based on EBITDA, depending on where they are in the organization. And so they're in control of their own destiny. And we want to make sure that they're aware of that and give them the tools and resources and guidance to make that happen.
I like EBITDA bonuses. Basically, hire people smart enough to figure out how to grow EBITDA. It means that they are going to get food, paper, labor,
Exactly.
bathrooms clean, low turnover, all these other things. But talk about some of that. Like, what are some of the triggers that you guys use in your comp plan to share? I am always up for sharing upside. Like, if you're bringing me more profit than I had yesterday, I'm happy to share it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it differs at different levels of the organization. Your GM's comp plan is going to be different than our chief operating officer's long-term incentive plan. But happy to dial in deeper in any of those. But generally speaking, we really try to look at that position and say, hey, what is that person in control of? What do they really have any control over, right? A GM has no control over rent or utilities to a degree, maybe a little bit of utilities. They don't have too much control over those things. So their bonus is really on the 60% of the P&L that they do have some control over, and of course sales. And so we really align bonuses based on that. Fast forward to Michael's level, he is in control of EBITDA. And that's, industry standard for an executive. That's what he's based off because he is an owner. He's got vested equity. And so he's very aligned with us on, hey, as long as I can get us the projected budgeted EBITDA, and that might look different depending on what's going on with food cost or sales. But we've empowered him to make those decisions to say, hey, at the end of the day, I just got to achieve this portfolio result.
Yeah. What are some of the struggles that you guys are dealing with? I know we all are, but what are some of the
Yeah,
struggles you guys are
sure.
dealing with, and how do you think you're getting through it so well?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one is the labor challenge. I would say it's exponentially harder for us because we operate in the smaller markets. And then on top of that, we just have so much growth that we're just always looking for people. On top of that, our Whataburgers, we have to hire 150 employees per location because of the size of those operations in 24 hours. So it's no easy feat going into a smaller market and you have to attract that many employees. But our Whataburger team, countless times, has surprised us, and they're able to get it done. And really, what it boils down to, the word is out, I would say. People know who we are. People in our markets know who we are. It's the best when we're opening, we're blessed to open in markets where we already have restaurants. And so if you own the Little Caesars and the Wingstop in a market, and then you come with your Whataburger and people find out, hey, this is a Vibe restaurant operated business, it makes our job so much easier because, as everybody knows, your customers are your future employees. And so customers that are eating at those other places know, like, is it crazy over there? Would I ever want to work there? And so I think that definitely adds to our success. I would be remiss to say we have a great recruiter, full time, who lives and breathes our culture. And I love spending time with him because the more time I spend with him, the more he's able to sell us and what we're about when he's talking to people. And he's a couple doors down, so I love hearing him, sell us to prospects, and really that's the angle today. Everybody has to offer a competitive wage. You'd be silly to think if you're going to offer less than anybody in your market and get a decent person. So that's just kind of the playing stakes, I'll call it. It's really aligning with, what is it that's in it for the employee? And really they want to be treated like a human. They want to see that you guys care and there's opportunity for them and growth. We really highlight the fact our big selling point is who are you going to go work with that's opening this many restaurants? You may start off as a manager here, but who knows? In a couple of years, you could be in a much more senior position because there's just that many opportunities. And we've got countless of success stories of acquisitions, single store acquisitions of people that have become supervisors and directors. And so we communicate that. We make videos about it. We're very forward in sharing this with our LinkedIn community, and we want people to know. And I'll end with, we attract very good talent at the senior level now from people that are batting. They could go wherever they want. They get paid way more, but they're willing to come work with us because they want to be part of something special. And as a founder, and I know my other co-founders feel this way, that's when you know you've done it right. when you're able to get the best, and they're willing to be part of the journey with you. So it's been pretty amazing.
Good, good. Thanks. Hey, tell me about some of your turnaround stories. Have you ever taken over? I mean, either one of your restaurants were struggling and then you turned it around by swapping out people, or you bought out, took over someone's struggling restaurants and turned them around?
Yeah, and we have stories, I would say, in both buckets, probably more on the acquisition side. Hey, I would be lying to say, hey, in our portfolio, we have no bad operators or bad managers, so we're constantly evaluating. But I will tell you, I know we usually, what do we call it now? We promote them to customer way quicker in today's vibe, way quicker than we ever have, because we see the writing on the wall. We have the pipeline. As most restaurant operators, I'm sure, can empathize with, you're often held hostage in a situation in your own restaurant where you have a bad operator, but you have no one to replace them. So they're kind of the better of the two evils, or you having to go run it yourself in some cases. We're blessed that we're not restricted by that. So ours happen, but they're very quick to change over, and we do
Yeah.
see major sales increases when that happens. But on the acquisition side, yeah, we see that a lot more often, because as the luck has it, or as part of a strategy maybe as well, we've gotten mixed bag. We've gotten stores that are great performers that we just go in there and keep doing what they're doing, and some in the middle, and then some are real turnarounds. And so, your question was around what we've done in those ones,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
yeah. So
How do
really,
you, like, what are the two or three levers that you pull to get an underperforming store back up to normal?
yeah, so I would say the first one right away that people are shocked by is we actually don't do anything on the people front. We, for the most part, hire everybody from the previous seller, because you know what? At the end of the day, we want to see what everybody's good at, and we've determined, and we know factually, that great people are maybe not great performers if they don't have a great leader. They don't have the right direction. So we built in part of this vibification, and our team goes deep, 60, 90, 120-day plan of what exactly this looks like. And so we see what we got, we assess, and then that's really when our team starts making these people decisions. And it's not a willy-nilly thing. We've got matrices. They put people in these boxes of kind of where they fit for where they should be. And we identify, okay, these are the opportunities. So really getting deep on the people side, we take the facilities really seriously as well. So unfortunately, some of the restaurants we buy have sometimes been neglected, and so it's really on purpose. I would say that really soon after we acquire a restaurant, we want to come in there and fix whatever's not working. We want to tell those employees, "Hey, we are vested in your success, and so we're going to fix whatever is preventing you from doing your job." Because that also goes back to the whole: you can't be authentic if you're not putting in your piece.
Yeah.
So we do that. That gets us a lot of street cred. And then it's just coming in with our systems and tools. We have a lot of restaurants and a lot of great people that have helped develop our own systems and processes that complement the what the brands are looking for. But at the end of the day, they tell you how to make the product. We as a franchisee have to understand how to run it with food, paper, and labor appropriately. So we roll out our systems to do that. And really, the last piece is empowering the leader. We understand that this business you cannot run remotely. And even with great ops coaches, they can't be everywhere. And so, really bringing up that manager to a place where they're self sufficient and they know, hey, they have somebody to count on, but that is their restaurant. And I'll end with, we're so serious about that in certain brands, I think it's in our no, I know it's in our Wingstop brand. If you are a top performer for X period of time, I want to say it's 1 year, where you're top performer, 5-star QSCs, you're rocking and rolling. We actually have a celebration, and this is the one I participated in Abilene, where your name goes on the front door of that restaurant. It says, operated by your local manager, and it puts their name.
Nice.
And it's a big deal, because that
Yeah.
means it's your restaurant, your name is on the front. You better run it like it's yours. And you have been. So this is an honor. And there are very few in our system so far at a percentage level that have that. And, it's something that's very aspirational. It's not something you can get easily by design. And so I would say I would end it with that. Just really, that takes it to the next level of ownership.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that. Yeah, I like the idea that you're going to connect the team, make them feel like they're owners and that they're really vested and really appreciate it. You also mentioned cleaning up the stores, right? So, like one of our terms is that you always want to keep a restaurant in near new condition. Like you got to keep it fresh and exciting. But one of the things I've found in every brand I've ever worked with, you get a store that struggles and the franchisee blames it on real estate or blames it on the franchisor or whatever. Another franchisee takes it over and all they do is operate. They just follow the systems and the standards. Sales go right back up where they were.
I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I'm a big advocate to say, hey, they've developed a system that works, and they've invested in resources and time and motion studies in a lot of cases. And so we fully adopt that, hey, we run the system the way it's designed. We don't reinvent the wheel in terms of how a pizza or a wing or a burger is made. We are maniacal about following it. Where we get creative is, hey, how can we influence? How can we motivate? How can we lead? Those are the things where our vibe magic, I would say, really comes alive. And it's a perfect merger because that's where they can't by design do that.
Hey, so Matt, I mean, let's talk about mentors for a second. Who's your mentor? Who are some of your mentors? If I were buying a franchise, if I were buying any of the ones that you guys are in right now, the first thing I would do is search out the most successful franchisees and just ask them, like, how do you do it? Like, how do you do it? Do you find that those franchisees are open? Like, are you open if a new franchisee comes in and says, Arfan, show me how to do what you do?
100% I'm open. Not only am I open, I've actually been seeking these kind of things lately, and people in my network and other people have now started reaching out to me, and for me that this is part of my journey as an entrepreneur to now say, hey, I figured out something. I haven't figured it all out. I don't want anybody listening to this to think that by all means I don't have a lot of stuff figured out, and we still figuring it out at Vibe. But whatever I have to share, there were a lot of people that shared with me that helped me navigate and not make as many mistakes. Made a lot of them, but maybe not as many. Maybe not as many catastrophic ones that would have taken me down. And so I'm very cognizant of the fact that, hey, it's my turn. And with that comes with making sure I have the time. Because if I can say I want to help people, but if you can't get a call with me for 2 months because I'm so busy grinding, well, I'm not really being authentic to that. So yes, to answer your question, long-winded way of saying yes, feel free. And I'm doing more speaking engagements. I got to speak at UNT a couple months ago on a franchising panel. And there are many things out there like that where I want to be a thought leader. I want to talk to people in a certain audience that are, just trying to figure this out and really say to them, hey, this franchising, this restaurant game is a real opportunity. I went to Cornell, I was in the hotel school, and I never knew anything about restaurant franchising. And it's something as part of this journey that, I hope someone from Cornell is listening. It's part of my journey to say, hey, you need to offer this as a course or something just to say, hey, this is an opportunity that's out there. And there, I would love to speak and be a part of whatever transpires with that.
Yeah. I think about all my mentors, and I've gotten a lot of really good advice over the years that honestly I didn't listen to, or I didn't listen to on time. Right. So if I could have done it over again, I can think of a lot of things I could have done better. But how about you? Like if you had to do it all over again, as you're 120, is this whole journey that you've been on, if you had to do it all over again, how could you do it bigger, better, faster, more successfully?
Yeah, so I want to separate that with two answers. So if the first part of it, if it was like, would I do it any differently? The answer would be heck no, because I've loved all of it, the hard parts, the shitty parts, the great parts, because that's been part of my happiness today. And I don't know if I would feel that same way if it was any different. So I wouldn't in my case, but if I was advising somebody that was doing it over again or starting from the beginning with the same aspiration, kind of rewinding, I would say, yeah, the key is the leadership piece. Hire people with the playbook, and the people with the playbook have it because they're expecting, they get paid well, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and just that's okay. But you have to find the win-win. Don't be afraid to give up a little piece of your pie, if it's aligned with long-term growth, because that was very hard for us as entrepreneurs. It was very hard to give vested equity. We'd never done it before. And let me tell you, that has really been a big piece of where we are today because we're very aligned with the growth and how we're going to get there. And so I would say, yeah, alignment on comp and just having that uh, forward thinking in terms of who to hire. And lastly, I would say never forget to spend time in your restaurants. That's something I tell myself now. And I'll be honest, I'm so busy with so many other things that I don't get the luxury of going to all the openings, and because I would never have time to do anything if I did that. We're on pace to open a new restaurant every 2 weeks, plus what we acquire, plus there's just a lot of openings, and so I spent some time last week in Greenville, the week before in Omaha, and for me to see with my own eyes the impact we make in people's lives is worth its weight in gold. And so, I it's very much something that's going to be part of my routine to really lean in on those celebrations that are happening because it matters. It's more than just numbers on a P&L at the end of the day.
What motivates you personally? Like you're not working for rent anymore. So like how do you kind of keep an edge now that you guys are 100 plus locations? Like what motivates you now? You mentioned giving back, mentoring, but
Yeah. Yeah, great question, and something that I think about on a regular basis because there is this transition going on from, call it the P&L stress or the P&L responsibility to saying, okay, that's working now. And so really I use the analogy of the treadmill, as part of being a YPO member and just having people in a network to reach out to. I've been really conscious now about talking to people who have been on this journey and they're a little bit ahead of me on the curve because my whole career has been built on, hey, talking to the people that are better than me or bigger. And for whatever reason, it never hurt my ego to just implement whatever they told me because I was never a restaurant operator anyway. And so whenever I learn things along the way, I'm like, okay, cool. That sounds great. We're going to start running our meetings like that. We're going to start doing quarterly meetings. And that worked to a point. Obviously now we've hired the people who know what they're doing. Um, but just for me, I would say to answer your question, just I'm cognizant about the second treadmill outside of Vibe because Vibe's not going to be around forever. And so now kind of running on this second treadmill so that eventually I do move over fully. And those things are all centered around giving back. I'm being very conscious to say, I don't want any financial reward. It's nothing in it for me. It's really just giving of my time, of my network, of my resource, of my knowledge, of whatever the case may be. And how that's showing up for me are doing podcasts like this, where, to be honest, I've said no hundreds of times to other podcasts, and I've just never had the bandwidth or the time or desire to share. And so sharing is a big thing. Using my resources now. I'm going to be a board member for a charity called Vogel Alcove that's catered toward the children of homeless people, starting next year, and really amping that up. And really, you understanding that, yeah, I have influence in these three amazing brands, and I can supercharge things that they're working on with the click of an email. And I've already see it transpire. And then lastly, I would say it's really through mentoring. We're going to bring on our first intern this year, which I'm super excited about this summer. And then just looking for ways to talk to students and to that population that's just trying to figure it out and realize that, hey, you can graduate high school and maybe you go to college, maybe you don't, but I can show you a path to making 150 grand guaranteed within a few years, and really understanding what that looks like. And the crazy thing for me is what I call the triple win. And if you ask me, hold on, I got to drink water here. If you ask me what gets me the most excited today, aside from all the things, the openings and all the adrenaline from deal making and all those things, the thing that gets me the most excited are identifying and honing in on what I call the triple win. And I probably stole this from somebody else, so I apologize, don't sue me, but I really believe this triple win exists, but you have to look for it. It's not the thing on the surface. What you see on the surface could be a single or a double win. It's good for me as the employer, it's good for you as the employee, healthcare, 401k, leadership, all those things kind of fit that mold. And we do those exceptionally well. And that's a big part of where we are today. But now my brain is all about what is the triple win. And when I say the triple win, now what is the third win? So some cases it could be offering early childhood education to the employees, the children of our employees, virtually or however we end up making that work. And that's an example of, hey, we're also going to impact your children's trajectory. I'm a firm believer that children are the key to everything, and that 0 to 4 is such a critical age. And so I'm putting in my resources to say, hey, where can I help move the needle? And there's the triple win within Vibe, and that's a great example of that. There's tuition reimbursement. There's a lot of things that I'm starting to understand that, hey, these are wins for us, but they're wins for the person's family, that can also be super impactful. Because imagine the loyalty you create when you not only help your employee, but if you help your employees' children and make their
Mhm.
lives better. I mean, I get goosebumps just even talking about it. And there's a
Yeah.
way to do that in a conscious capitalistic way.
But there's a reason that in 2024, with all the headwinds in our industry, there's a reason that you're thriving with like double digit increases and all these other success metrics at the same time that other people are sort of struggling. And it's
Yeah.
because of the investment that you make in your people and your processes and your systems. So
For sure.
that's great.
It's just a little Venn diagram. I don't want to discredit our brands also sell products that tend to do very well in these environments and are never being complacent, which is always a worry. When you're 20% up every quarter or every month, there's a fear that, oh, are you going to just rest on your laurels? And I guarantee you, because I get a front row seat, they are not resting. None of these brands are resting on their laurels. And so
Yeah.
it's really the Venn diagram of their products, their marketing, our operating platform, and then the piece that brings it all together is that people culture piece. If you imagine three little
Yeah.
circles like that, it's that middle piece is Vibe Restaurants. And that middle piece is, to answer your question, all those three things have to happen to see the success, right? Because you could do all of this and not have a brand that's innovative or selling good products, and you're going to have nothing near what we're receiving, what we're seeing today.
Yeah.
And so just a lot of things aligning, and we're really big on momentum. And so our team knows, hey, when we have positive momentum, our job as leaders is to keep that momentum going. And so even me, that's a big piece of what I do. I want to keep and add on to the momentum that we have because it's very palpable in our organization.
Well, good. Well, thank you, man. Any other thoughts, anything we didn't cover that you were thinking we'd cover? Any good advice that you've ever gotten? I got one time some guy told me to not confuse effort and results. I'm like,
Ah,
I
I,
learned that when I was like 18 and that stuck with me. It's a good one.
I like that one. I would say a couple things. I would say I've talked a lot about me and my in the business. I would like to say for me, having two other business partners that are both brothers, even one's technically the biological brother, having that alignment and trust with specifically three people actually is a really magical number because you would think my brother and I are always aligned and it's Shalin having to break it up. But it's actually not the case. Usually Shalin and I are aligned and Basil's the one. We're just different ages, and so it makes for different decision making. But having that support and, just emotionally when you're making big decisions, we get a lot of things wrong, don't get me wrong. But when there's three of us looking at it, the percentage of wrong decisions goes down. And so emotionally, it's just nice to have people to celebrate your wins with, but also to have somebody to support you when shit's hitting the fan, because it has. So that's a piece of advice. Partnerships are tricky, but they work. And ours works because we learned very early on what our lanes were, and we've tried really hard to stay in those lanes. And we don't really separate our friendship from our business because they're the same. At the end
No.
of the day, people who try to compartmentalize, those are my business partners and those are my friends. In our case, Vibe is the three owners. And if our vibe is whack, it's going to show itself somewhere at some point in time. So we're really conscious about saying, hey, okay, we might disagree, but I'm not willing to rock the boat over this, probably what is really an immaterial decision at the end of the day,
Yeah.
what color the logo is going to be or whatever it is. So I would say that partnerships work. There's definitely a lot of advantages. I would say advice we got early on was, cut your losses quick. I think the analogy they said, kill your babies fast. Probably not. Maybe you want to edit that one, not PC. But it was very timely for us to realize that because we had a bunch of dogs at that time. In certain markets, it was just a lot of dead weight and it was really bringing us down. And it was so much ego and pride that we had selected those sites, we were running those restaurants. And really, we had alignment around, hey, if we really know we made a mistake, let's figure out how to undo it and pay out of it and pay out of the lead, whatever it takes, ethically, of course, whatever the right thing is to do, but let's not try to fix something that can't be fixed. And so that's a hard pill. And that's something I actually have to I told a friend recently who was a Cornell friend of mine, he was in my class, one of my best friends. And that was the first thing I had to tell him was like, you got to maybe look at exiting. And that was a hard thing to say because this is his baby, but that's the best advice I could give because I've been through that, Just got to move on. And then lastly, always be curious. And that curiosity for me has been a big part of where we are today, Be curious, but you have to balance it. Be curious as an entrepreneur or founder, but have people on your team who you trust and respect who can keep you focused. Because it's a constant pull of the rubber band. The entrepreneur wants to do everything under the sun with the platform, and a real smart partner who's an executive, in our case, Jeremy and Michael, have the balls to say, hey, Irfaan, even though on paper this makes a lot of money and it's going to be great, we shouldn't do it because it takes our eye off the ball. And so aligning with those type of leaders who you brought on to run their playbook, you have to then say, okay, I give you the bandwidth and the authority to actually make those decisions. And we get trapped in that too. But our guys are good enough to say, hey, reminder, you brought us on to do this, so let us do our jobs, We're not immune to it, but we're much, much better than we were 5 years ago.
Good. I like it. Well, Irfaan, you've been amazing. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. What's that?
I'm sure you say that to everybody.
No. This is good. We got some really good nuggets, and I'm glad that you're going to be doing more speaking and more panels because, it's true. A lot of people are going to be getting gifts from you because you're going to be teaching success secrets. But the truth is, you're the one giving the gift. It just feels good to help people, right?
It's really the most fulfilled I've felt in a very long time.
Good. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you again, Irfaan, and I will see you soon. Thanks for joining Smart Franchising.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dan.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. I'm your host, Dan Rowe. If you enjoyed today's episode, this podcast is only going to get better. Please like, comment, and subscribe to hear more from the most successful franchisors and franchisees, and we'll see you next time.